The realtor hadn't mentioned the basement. Ryan Parker, 32 and newly flush with cash from his latest investment windfall, ran his hand along the dusty oak banister as he descended the narrow staircase of his newly acquired Boston brownstone. The musty scent of aged paper and forgotten furniture greeted him as he flicked on the light switch, revealing a space untouched for what appeared to be decades. "Another renovation project," he muttered, adjusting his designer glasses. The October rain pattered against the small ground-level windows, casting gloomy shadows across the cluttered room. Ryan had spent the morning on conference calls, bragging about his foresight in the biotech market. His investment firm, Parker Capital, had tripled its assets in 18 months, a fact he never tired of mentioning. As he wandered through the basement, shifting boxes and examining forgotten items, he paused at a desk tucked in the corner. Under a heavy canvas cover sat what appeared to be an old computer, the beige casing yellowed with age. A surge of nostalgia mixed with amusement washed over him as he wiped away the dust. "An IBM 5150? Ryan chuckled, recognizing the vintage machine from his computer history course in college. Must be from the early 80s. He lifted the bulky monitor and examined the chunky keyboard beneath it. On impulse, he cleared space on the desk and plugged the power cord into a nearby outlet. To his surprise, when he pressed the power button, the machine hummed to life, its green monochrome display flickering with amber text. "C." The cursor blinked steadily, waiting for a command. Ryan laughed, pulling his smartphone from his pocket to take a photo for his Instagram. "Check out my new supercomputer," he typed as a caption, tagging several of his investment buddies. More out of amusement than curiosity, he typed "help" and hit enter. The screen flickered and text scrolled rapidly. Predictor Exe System v2.43. Unauthorized access. Detected continuing previous session loading user profile. Ryan raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the custom software. Likely some accounting program the previous owner had used. The basement had belonged to the house's former owner, Dr. Harold Winters, a mathematics professor who had passed away earlier that year. His children had sold the property without clearing out many of his possessions. "Predictor Dex," Ryan typed, hitting enter. "Analyzing current user. Scanning local temporal anomalies. Prediction sequence initiated." Ryan snorted. "What is this? Some kind of fortune-telling program?" He took another photo, adding it to his story with the caption, "This ancient tech thinks it can predict the future. Should I ask about my stock picks?" The screen blinked, then displayed. October 17th, 2025. Northeastern power grid failure. 3:42 p.m. October 18th, 2025. Biogene Pharmaceuticals stock drop, 68% by close. October 22nd, 2025. Subject Ryan Parker, files for bankruptcy. Ryan stared at the screen, his smile fading. He hadn't told the computer his name. The rain intensified outside, droplets hammering against the windows as thunder rumbled in the distance. A chill ran through him that had nothing to do with the basement's temperature. "Very funny," he muttered, assuming it was a prank program. Perhaps the realtor had set this up, or one of his friends had somehow accessed the house before him. He pressed a few more keys, trying to exit the program, but the computer seemed locked on the prediction screen. With a shake of his head, Ryan unplugged the machine. "Stupid waste of time," he said to the empty room, climbing the stairs back to the main floor. That evening, as he unpacked boxes in his home office, Ryan couldn't shake the unease that had settled over him. Biogene Pharmaceuticals was his firm's largest holding, nearly 40% of their portfolio. He'd leveraged his clients' investments heavily on the company's promising new cancer treatment. "Just a coincidence," he told himself, pouring a glass of expensive bourbon. "Some random guesswork by an obsolete machine." He glanced at his phone. October 16th, 2025. Tomorrow would prove how ridiculous those predictions were. As he drifted to sleep that night in his new home, the sound of rain still drumming against the roof, Ryan couldn't stop thinking about the amber text on that green screen. The computer's predictions lingered in his mind like a half-remembered nightmare. The power went out at exactly 3:42 p.m. the next day. Ryan was in the middle of a heated call with his investment partners when his office went dark and the line went dead. Looking out his window, he saw the entire neighborhood had lost electricity. "Coincidence," he muttered, though his heart hammered in his chest. He checked his phone. The news reported a massive power grid failure across the Northeast, affecting 5 states. The outage was attributed to a critical infrastructure failure during scheduled maintenance, something no one could have predicted. No one except an ancient computer in his basement. When power returned that evening, Ryan found himself drawn back downstairs. The old IBM sat silent in the darkness like a patient sentinel. With trembling fingers, he plugged it in and switched it on. The familiar green glow illuminated his face as the system booted up. "How did you know?" he typed. "Predictor system does not interpret causality, only probability patterns across information networks. Question: will you heed the warning?" Ryan's finger hovered over the keyboard. "What warning?" October 18th, 2025. Biogen Pharmaceuticals, stock drop 68% by close. October 22nd, 2025. Subject: Ryan Parker files for bankruptcy. Continue, YN. The cursor blinked steadily, waiting for his response. Ryan glanced at his watch. The markets would open in 12 hours. He had tens of millions invested in Biogen, both his money and his clients. The company's Phase 3 trial results were expected to be phenomenal, according to every analyst report. "This is absurd," he whispered, yet found himself typing Y anyway. Accessing historical databases. Previous owner failed to heed warnings. System developed by Dr. Harold Winters, Mathematics, MIT. Algorithm combines market microtransactions, weather patterns, social media analysis, prediction accuracy, 98.7%. Ryan's throat went dry. Dr. Winters, the previous homeowner. He rushed upstairs to his laptop and searched for information on Harold Winters. Articles appeared showing a brilliant mathematician who had worked on predictive algorithms for financial markets in the 1980s before mysteriously withdrawing from academic life. Further searches revealed a Wall Street Journal piece from 1987, mentioning Winters as having predicted the Black Monday crash 3 days before it happened. The article dismissed his warning as a lucky guess. Ryan spent the night researching Biogen's fundamentals. Everything looked perfect on paper. Strong leadership, promising trial results, solid financials. Yet doubt gnawed at him. By morning, he'd made a decision. When markets opened, Ryan began quietly liquidating his Biogen positions. His phone rang constantly, clients and partners questioning his sudden move. By noon, he'd sold 70% of his holdings, taking significant losses but preserving capital. At 2:17 p.m., the news broke. Biogen's cancer treatment had shown unexpected severe side effects in a patient group. Trading halted, then resumed in a free fall. By closing bell, the stock had plummeted exactly 68%, just as predicted. Ryan stood in his office, watching the financial bloodbath on his screens, numb with disbelief. He'd saved himself from total ruin, but his reputation was in tatters. Clients were threatening lawsuits for the losses they'd taken. His partners were demanding explanations for his sudden change in strategy. As rain streaked down his office windows, Ryan realized he'd only postponed disaster. He still faced potential bankruptcy from client litigation. With determined steps, he headed back to the basement, seeking more answers from the machine that had both saved and damned him. "I need more information," Ryan demanded, fingers striking the keys of the old IBM with growing desperation. The green text scrolled across the screen in response. Bankruptcy filing probability, 89.4%. Causation factors: 1. Client litigation, 76%. 2. Partner dissolution, 62%. 3. Reputation damage, 94%. Alternative outcomes available, YN. Ryan hesitated, then typed Y, analyzing alternatives. 3 intervention points identified. Primary intervention: Locate file C7 in Dr. Winter's research. Where is this file? Ryan typed, frustration mounting. Insufficient data. Search home premises. Thunder crashed outside as Ryan began tearing through the basement, opening drawers and boxes. Hours passed as he excavated decades of Dr. Winter's life. Academic journals, family photos, handwritten equations on yellowed paper. At 2 a.m., behind a loose brick in the basement wall, he discovered a fireproof lockbox. Inside lay a leather-bound journal labeled Causality Predictions, File C7. The journal detailed how Dr. Winters had developed his prediction algorithm after noticing market patterns following the 1982 recession. What had begun as an academic exercise evolved into something that frightened even its creator. The final entries described Winter's horror at the accuracy of his machine's predictions and his inability to change outcomes once certain probability thresholds were crossed. One passage caught Ryan's attention. The system cannot be defeated, only redirected. When facing inevitable loss, transfer the burden. The next morning, Ryan called an emergency meeting with his 3 partners at a coffee shop near Boston Common. Rain continued to fall, splashing against the windows as they sat in a private corner booth. "I need to show you something," Ryan said, placing printouts of Dr. Winter's journal before them. "This is why I sold Biogene before the crash." His partners, James, Melissa, and David, exchanged skeptical glances as he explained about the computer and its predictions. "You're saying an ancient PC in your basement predicted a stock crash?" James scoffed. "You sound unhinged, Ryan." "It also predicted my bankruptcy," Ryan continued, ignoring the interruption. "But I think there's a way out for all of us." "We're facing client lawsuits because of your impulsive selling," Melissa reminded him. "Even with the crash, your timing made things worse." "What if I told you I could prove it works?" Ryan countered. "The machine predicted specific events with precise timing. The power outage, the stock drop percentage, exactly 68%. David, the quietest partner, finally spoke. And that's a massive if, this thing works. What does it suggest we do?" Ryan slid a formal document across the table. "The machine said to transfer the burden. I'm offering to take full responsibility. This agreement makes me the sole decision-maker for the Biogene trades. You 3 disavow any knowledge. I absorb all liability." "You'd sacrifice yourself?" James asked, suspicion evident in his voice. "Not exactly," Ryan replied. "The prediction changes if I do this. Instead of bankruptcy, there's a different outcome. I've seen it." What Ryan didn't reveal was that the computer had shown him something else, a narrow path where responsibility transfer would redirect the bankruptcy outcome to one of his partners instead of him. The machine couldn't be defeated, only redirected. As his partners reviewed the document, Ryan fought to keep his expression neutral. The guilt of his deception warred with his survival instinct. Rain drummed against the windows, marking time as moral choices hung in the balance. "I need to think about this," David said finally, folding the agreement. "We all do," Melissa added, her eyes studying Ryan with new wariness. As they departed, Ryan checked his phone. October 20th, 2 days until the predicted bankruptcy. Time was running out. The following day brought no relief from the autumn storm. Water pooled in Boston's streets as Ryan paced his home office, checking his phone repeatedly. None of his partners had signed the agreement. The computer's prediction remained unchanged. At noon, his doorbell rang. David stood on the porch, rain dripping from his coat. "I did some research on Dr. Harold Winters," David said as Ryan led him inside. "Brilliant mathematician, also committed suicide in this house last year." Ryan froze. "That wasn't in the disclosure documents." "No, it wouldn't be," David agreed. "But I have contacts in the university." Winters became obsessed with his prediction algorithm. Believed he couldn't escape some terrible outcome it had forecasted. "You think I'm having the same delusion," Ryan realized. "I think grief and fear make people grasp at patterns." David replied gently. "After the Biogene disaster, you're looking for meaning in coincidence." Ryan led David to the basement. The computer sat silent, unplugged since the previous night. Turn it on, Ryan challenged. Ask it something only you would know. Reluctantly, David watched as Ryan booted the machine. The green text welcomed them with its steady glow. Type a question, Ryan insisted. David hesitated, then typed, "What was my childhood address?" The screen flickered. Analyzing user, David Michael Chen. Access point, 247 Maple Street, Cleveland, Ohio, 1982-1996. Bankruptcy transfer attempt detected. Redirecting outcome probability. David stumbled backward. How could it know that? I haven't lived there in 30 years. Ryan's phone buzzed with a news alert. The SEC had just announced an investigation into Parker Capital for insider trading related to the Biogene sell-off. It's happening, Ryan whispered. The countdown to bankruptcy. David stared at the machine, then at Ryan. You were going to transfer the bankruptcy to one of us, weren't you? That's what this agreement was really about. Ryan couldn't meet his eyes. The algorithm can't be defeated, only redirected. Someone has to take the fall. That's what drove Winters to suicide, David realized. The moral weight of his predictions. They stood in silence as rain pounded the small basement windows. Finally, David spoke. There's another way. Not a redirection, but a distribution. The next morning, all four partners held a press conference. They jointly announced full cooperation with the SEC investigation, acknowledged their firm's failure to properly diversify client holdings, and unveiled a structured repayment plan using their personal assets to compensate affected clients. We made mistakes, Ryan told the assembled reporters, humility replacing his usual arrogance, and we're taking collective responsibility. That evening, Ryan returned to the basement, alone. The computer displayed a new message. Bankruptcy probability, 12% outcome, redirected through shared burden. Congratulations, user. You found the solution. Dr. Winters missed. Ryan stared at the screen, understanding dawning. Winters had tried to escape his fate alone, refusing to share his burden. The algorithm wasn't just predicting outcomes, it was testing human nature. With steady hands, Ryan typed, "What happens now? System requirements fulfilled. Ethical parameters satisfied. Program terminating." The screen went black. Ryan tried restarting the machine, but it remained silent. Its purpose complete. The predictor had shut down forever. 6 months later, a smaller, humbler Parker Capital was slowly rebuilding its reputation. The four partners had weathered the crisis together, losing much of their personal wealth but retaining their licenses and integrity. On a clear spring day, Ryan packed the old IBM into its original box. He carried it to the university's computer science department, along with Dr. Winters's complete journals. Some technology deserved study, not exploitation. As he handed over the materials to the department chair, Ryan included a note of his own. Some burdens aren't meant to be carried alone. The prediction that had once terrified him had ultimately saved more than his finances. It had revealed the true cost of his arrogance and the unexpected value of shared responsibility.